So you're like a cell phone. What I want to do is I want to give you a little bit of a map so you can find your network. Have y'all seen that new ad with the "Can you hear me now" guy? He switched. I don't know who did that, but that was brilliant. Okay, anyway, it's a different story. I'm going to give you a map so you can find your network. All right. Any questions? Okay, now this is the universe. All right? And here's what happens. You're that cell phone. And from the second you came into this world, you've been searching for a connection. If we had a video, your birth, here's what you did. You came out and you went, wee, wee, wee. You're searching for connection. Okay? You singles know what I'm talking about, right? You're out there searching. I'm kidding. Okay, so that's what we do in life. Now, here's the deal. Not everybody knows that they're doing that, because sometimes people have gone through things and there wasn't anybody available, and they became the network to themselves. They try to meet all their own needs. But everybody's searching for a connection. Now, here's what happens. I want you to understand something about the universe. There are only 4 possibilities of where you can be in any moment in this universe where God has put us. And in this whole universe, remember, you're always searching for a connection. You're like that phone. You're looking. Your heart is looking for what it needs. But here's what happens. When you take the GPS reading, have you ever gone and sat with a friend and you sit down in the restaurant and they say, "So where are you?" Well, you go, "I'm in the restaurant, you idiot." No, but what they're asking is, where are you inside? See, that's the GPS. Where are you? And I want to ask you today, where are you in your life? Because there's only 4 places we can be. Number 1 is we can be in the corner where there's no connection. And we're emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, whatever way, whatever it is our need is, we're in a corner where we're not connecting with anybody and we're not connecting with God. Or maybe we're connecting with God like Paul was, but there's no Titus. And a lot of people will try to live and function in all areas of life from this corner 1 where there's no connection. Now, they may have people around them. I've seen executive teams of high performers, but something's wrong in the business, and you get into that board or that executive team, or you get into a family, or you get into a marriage where you have the couple in the room. Oh, there's somebody in the room with them, but there's no connection. Because of woundedness, because of whatever it is, defensiveness, hurt, pride, all the stuff, what happens is we might have bodies around us, but we're alone in that relationship. And we start to have symptoms. Like, it loses its meaning. It loses its joy. It loses its energy. Start to get depressed. And that's a crummy place to live. Crummy place to live. Especially when somebody's around. It's like the old George Thorogood song. He said, "When I drink alone, I prefer to be by myself." Think about that sentence. And see, sometimes people are with some people, but there's no connection and they're alone. Well, that's not very good. So we'll go over to corner 2, and that's the corner I'm going to call a bad connection. And a bad connection, it may be abusive, but it may not be. It may be very nice. But a bad connection, the nature of the connection is this, that you end up feeling bad about yourself in some way. You're not good enough. You're inferior. There's some expectation that you just can't ever meet. And in that connection, no matter how hard you try, you end up experiencing, there's a lot of different words for it, but it's shame or guilt or inferiority or badness. And I just wish I could be better in some way. But you never can quite get there. Well, that doesn't feel good. Anybody ever felt that before? You've had a parent or a boss or somebody where you just can't be good enough for them. Well, that doesn't feel good. So what do? We go, "I don't want to hang out with them anymore." So we go back to corner 1. Some people do this with God. They realize, I have no meaning in life. I'm looking for God. So they go to church, but they go to a church of bad connection. Because it's one of those churches that all they do is preach, guilt, and how they have a 3-point sermon every week. God's good, you're bad, try harder. That's not the Bible. But that's what we think it is. So then they go, I'm not going to church anymore. Go back over here. But then this is crummy. I mean, this is like isolation or shame. Who wants to live there? Is there a better option? Well, how about corner 3? I'm going to go down here. And corner 3 is the fake good connection. In other words, it's a pseudo good. It feels good. We go to corner 3 because we want to feel good, so we medicate ourselves. Now, I say fake because it feels good, but it only feels good for a minute because it's like a sugar high. In fact, some people's corner 3 is a sugar high. I heard a Christian speaker, a woman, say one time, she got on stage, said she confessed that she was having an affair with 2 men, Ben and Jerry. See, there's a lot of ways to go to corner 3. Sometimes it is an illicit relationship. Sometimes it's a substance. Sometimes it's a porn addiction. Sometimes, for high performers, it's next quarter's numbers, or driving sales, or driving people, or driving your kid to better grades, or the next trophy, or whatever it is. But something that's going to make me feel good, the problem is it makes me feel good for a minute. And if Bryce had been drowning, Mark could have thrown him a trophy. That wasn't going to do it because it only lasts for a minute. What we need corner 4. And that's real connection. Because that's where we get fueled. So I want you to ask yourself, and by the way, these are not static. In other words, your whole life, my whole life is not going to be here or here or here. See, we're dynamic creatures. And we can go in the period of a day. We can go through. I can do this when I'm speaking to you, right? Because I need to know. Are y'all with me? Good, we're connecting. All right. But I tell you, I've been speaking before, and I'm out there, and I'm all excited. And I go, we got to talk about God and life. We're going to make this better. And then it's like they're looking at me like this, And I go, oh, I'm not connecting. Of course I'm not connecting. I suck. I'm awful. I'm bad. I should have said that line better, or, whatever. I got the denomination wrong, or I could have done. Why didn't I prepare? And I'll be glad when this thing is over so I can go binge. And that can happen in a millisecond. But see, what God tells us is wherever you are in your life in any day, I want you to pull out your GPS and say, wait a minute, what's going on with me? I need some help. I need to reach out to God or to somebody. I need Titus. So you don't have to go this way like a European roundabout. You can go from any of these corners down to corner 4 at any time. God says if we own our vulnerability and say, I need some help, and that's how work teams ought to look like, and that's how business partnerships ought to look like. And instead of couples criticizing each other, they ought to be able to turn to each other and say, I'm not doing well in this area. I'm failing you. Help me. Or I need some help. But see, that requires for us to go through this doorway. And we won't open up the door sometimes because it's too hard. It's too painful. A few years ago, well-known, a world-class surgeon who on the East Coast, medical centers run on his name, and just a phenomenal guy. He called me and said somebody referred him to me, and he said, I want to fly to LA and spend a day with you. I got an issue. And so he came out, and his issue was this. For a number of years, he had been having affairs pretty much with every nurse in the hospital, administrators and everybody else. And he just, so many women in his trail. And his wife, he got caught, and his wife was willing to put it back together. So he flies out, and he says, okay, so I got a plan. I want you to listen to my plan and tell me what you think. So I listened to his plan. It was a great plan, a lot of great things in it. He said, I'm going to start meeting my wife's needs. We're going to go on a walk every night before bedtime. I'm going to pray with her. I'm going to do my spiritual disciplines. I'm going to read, more of the Bible and all this kind of stuff. And as he's sitting there describing this plan, I'm getting more and more depressed. And he said, what do you think? And I said, well, you're headed for a second heart attack. He said, what are you talking about? I said, because everything you said, that whole plan, it's guaranteed to fail. He said, why? I said, because it all depends on you. It's all output. You're going to try harder. You've been trying a long time. And see, what happened is you ran out, and you needed some fueling, and you ran out. So you went and found that fueling, but you found it over here, and that never gets to the heart. I said, let me tell you something about the human heart. And this is a world-class heart surgeon, right? He looks at me and goes, okay, tell me something about the heart. I said, it's got a couple pipes coming in, a couple pipes going out, right? And your pipes coming in are clogged. I said, where did you learn that it all depended on you and you couldn't take anything from the outside? He sat there and it sort of like got him a little bit, and he looks up and he says, I just remembered a night. Maybe this has something to do with it. And he talked about when he was in the 10th grade, and he had 3 or 4 younger siblings. He was in the 10th grade. His father was an alcoholic who they took off to rehab one night, and his mother broke down, and she went to a psychiatric hospital for a year. And he was on his own with 4 little brothers and sisters, and he said, I remember walking out in the yard and saying, well, I guess it all depends on me now. And I took care of him. He said, then I went to pre-med and then medical school and all of that. And I got into residency, and then I've been at it, and this wheel's been grinding ever since. I guess that's what you're talking about. I said it is. So we did a different program, and we redesigned the program. Certainly he was going to do the stuff for his wife he talked about, but we got him down here. He got him in a group, and I got him with a couple of sponsors, and I got him with a good counselor and a support system. And this is a world-class surgeon doing a gazillion surgeries a week. And we say we don't have time for all that, right? He was investing 12 hours a week in different corner 4 experiences, where he was opening up and starting to process things and let Titus come to him. He calls me a year later. He says, I want to come see you. And this time I'm going to bring my wife. And they came, and they finally had the relationship that they had always wanted, and he was doing great, but he was still plugged into corner 4. See, that's how God designed us. Ephesians 4 says, it's not always zapping. It's about this body. He'll answer our prayers, and he answers our prayers through each other. I remember a number of years ago, I had this big business calamity. And I'd hired a guy to run a company I owned, and he really screwed it up, and I found out we're in deep, deep trouble. And as end of the year, and he comes in and said, we need a big cash infusion. He had been telling me he was going to start, dispersing money. Like I thought he was going to write me checks. Now he wants me to write him one. So I get further into this, and I find out we are deeply, deeply in trouble that he hadn't told me about. And the cash burn was so big, and I'm playing this out, and this is not good. And I went home. I was out on my patio, and I was here in a bad way. How could I have done this? How could I have screwed this up? Why didn't I look further into why didn't I give more oversight? I should have, all this kind of stuff. And I did not see any way out. And I'm asking God, and I'm praying, and I didn't see any way out, and I just knew it was over. The phone rings. It sounds like a theme in my life, right? The phone rings. This is before caller ID, because I would not have answered it had I known who it was. It was my main mentor in life, a man that 20 years older than me that had sort of adopted me out of graduate school and poured into me, taught me everything I know about business. He said, so how's it going? Last person I want to talk to. It's like I'm failing. I made a big screw up. Everything he's ever touched turned to gold. I said, not so well. And he said, what's up? And I told him the story. And I'm sitting there waiting for him to say, you idiot, how could you? And I'm sitting there, and I tell the story, and I say, well, that's what's it. And I stop, and the phone's silent for a moment. And here's what he says. He goes, well, we've all been there. We? I said, we? You? You've been there? He goes, oh, yeah. He said, I've made that mistake. He said, anybody who's ever built anything has made that mistake. I said, well, which one? I got a lot of them. He says, you hired the wrong guy. You didn't do your due diligence. You put the wrong guy in there. Anybody's ever built anything has made that mistake. He said, but once you do it once, you'll never do it again. He said, tell me more about it. And he went in the story, and I started explaining it, and I'm processing all this. And here's what happens. I get to the end of that call after about an hour, and I'm telling you, I was a different human. I was Bryce going down, and there's no way I could have put that thing. I didn't know what I was going to do. But at the end of that hour, I was, in Paul's words, refreshed by Titus. And what happened was, and now I know this from neuroscience, my brain had changed. There was wiring happening. There were different chemicals flowing through me at the neurotransmitter level. I needed a big cash infusion. I didn't have it yet. I needed a plan. I didn't have it yet. I needed better ideas. I didn't have it yet at the end of that call. I didn't have anything I needed, but I knew I can do this. And with God's help, we're going to fix this, and we're going to turn this thing around. And I woke up the next morning, and I went and attacked it, and it took about a year, and God rescued it in exceedingly abundantly more than anything I could have ever dreamed, as the verse says. But it wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened without Titus. So I'll close with this. None of us is a self-made person. It's the biggest oxymoron ever. You hear people say, well, I'm a self-made man. No, you're not. Self-made, or worse than that, self-help. People say, you write self-help books. I go, no. There's no such thing as self-help. That's the biggest y'all know what an oxymoron is? Like two words don't go together. Like, Microsoft works. You just can't. Self-help, there's no such thing. If you think you're the source to yourself, then hold your breath. We can wait on you. You'll bend the knee. Because ultimately, we need life to come to us from the outside. And Jesus Christ came to the earth because we were stuck in these three corners. We were cut off, separated from life, and we all hit our limits. Or we were wallowing in guilt and shame and not good enough. Or we were trying to escape all that by medicating ourselves in some way. And Jesus comes to you this morning, and what he says is, come home. Doesn't matter where you are. Just come home. And we have the only faith in the world. Go look at all of them. We have the only one in the world that matches reality. It's the only one in the world that can answer that question of how does something invisible affect the visible life? Because God is a spirit, and he has breathed invisible life into each of us, and none of us is the creator. We are dependent on the outside. And he says that's in two ways, directly with him and with each other. And if we're amputated from either one of those, we're not running on all cylinders. So here's my prayer for you. Open this door. If you're isolated, or you're ashamed or guilty, or you're still running around trying to feel better, go through this door and come to corner 4 and say, God, call me. I need your help. And then when the phone rings, or you pick up the phone, better yet, and you call somebody. Come to one of the groups here or something and say, God, I need you. And I promise you, he will show up. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that you haven't, just the simplest way I know to say this, God, is you haven't left us in those three corners. That you see us where we are. And God, we want to start by lifting up your name and thank you for coming to us when we're not even opening the door. We're not even aware there is a door. And God, I pray that every person here throughout every day, that we can realize whenever we're alone, whenever we're feeling bad, or whenever we're tempted to go try to feel better in a way that's not going to help us, God, remind us to open the door to you and to one of your people. I pray this morning, God, that you will melt doorknobs inside of hearts that have been afraid and reach inside and call us home to you. In Jesus' name, amen.